friends, I'm Scott Giles, minister and hypnotist, and welcome to Power Talk, my video blog where I cover topics that interest me, focusing on how you can use the power of your mind to take control of your life. If you want to know more about my professional work or sign up for my free e-newsletter, Power Lines, check out my website, which I'll tag in the description. Well, today I want to reflect on what a reasonable and philosophical person should do in a situation where things you regard as bad are happening and people you regard as bad are exerting power. Well, as someone who is politically progressive like I am and who has longed to see a just and humanitarian solution, for example, to the ethnic problems in the Middle East, this is hitting home for me right now as I see proposals seriously being discussed that amount to ethnic cleansing. That's deeply upsetting to me because forcing people off their land is terribly unjust, but it's not unique. It's happened a lot over the course of history. Even here in America, we had the Trail of Tears, where we forced Native Americans off their land. Now, in the course of history, things like this are well known. In the ancient world, Rome originally tried strategies like this when they conquered an area. They would force people to behave like Romans. But they ultimately discovered it was a bad idea. Not only didn't it work very well, people kept finding ways to work around Roman government, but that everyone knew in their heart that what was happening just wasn't right. People didn't feel good about it, and ultimately, Roman culture deteriorated. The emperors eventually figured this out and tried a softer approach. They became tolerant, encouraged their military to settle in foreign lands and to intermarry with the indigenous population, because they realized that bad behavior doesn't work in the long term. It creates a shadow. People will ultimately push back. Now, once upon a time, there was a great military strategist in China named Sun Tzu. He wrote a book called The Art of War that is studied by martial artists to this day, as well as by strategy professionals. One of Sun Tzu's points is that one should choose one's enemies carefully because you become like them. Now, what he meant by this is that in order to defeat an enemy, you have to be able to guess what your enemy is up to. To do that effectively, you have to kind of get inside your enemy's head and imagine how your enemy is thinking. But as you get your head around how your enemy thinks, that changes you. It changes your thoughts at other times. It can corrupt you. And I use that word deliberately. The mind is flexible. When you entertain thoughts in the mind that do not arise from your personality and temperament, your mind alters. To think like your enemies, you basically allow your enemy's personality and temperament to overshadow your own. While strategically useful, it changes you. And if you spend a lot of time fighting bad people, it will affect you. I'm sure some of you have encountered good law enforcement professionals who gradually become hardened and cruel after years of having to deal with hardened and cruel people. This can happen to anyone. When we live through a bad time or have to deal with bad people, whether governments, employers, faculty, someone in authority over us who is somehow corrupt, we will adapt to survive. But we will also change, and inevitably will become prone to adopt some of the characteristics of the bad people we're dealing with, because that's the easiest way to fight them. So bad times make bad people and corrupts good people. Now this is a reality that philosophical people have always had to deal with. The ancient philosophers who would spend their time talking about what the good is often had to live in times where bad people were in charge, like the Roman emperors Nero or Caligula. To keep themselves safe, they had to be careful, but they also recognized the danger pointed out by people like Sun Tzu. Don't let bad times make you a bad person. In the novel The Lord of the Rings, author Tolkien has a character, Elrond, who says, "Alas, no, we cannot use the ruling ring. That we know too well. It belongs to Sauron and was made by him alone and is altogether evil. Its strength is too great for anyone to wield at will, save only those who already have a great power of their own. But for them it holds an even deadlier peril. The very desire of it corrupts the heart. If any one of the wise should use this ring to overthrow the Lord of Mordor, using his own arts, he would then set himself on Sauron's throne, and yet another Dark Lord would appear. If you use the weapons of the enemy, you become no better than the enemy." The strategy that philosophers found, very much intended as a treatment for the mind's tendency to change and become darker, is that when one ponders what bad things might happen, also be honest with yourself. Any therapist will tell you that one of the major difficulties people have in therapy is denial about the degree they have messed up. Everything is someone else's fault, or bad luck, or I was a victim of circumstance, and so on. While it is true that all of us have to deal with the cards that life has dealt us, that's not a license to cheat at cards. Everyone needs to be honest with themselves about what motivates them, the degree to which they are complicit with their own problems, and that we all have a tendency to seek the easy way around problems rather than doing the hard work. And you have to be honest with yourself about that. And then you make a decision not to use the weapons of the enemy. You're not going to be as bad as the people you're opposing. You're not going to do what they're doing. You're going to take the higher road. And that is what people who have been successful in living through bad times and dealing with bad people without becoming corrupted have done. They sit down and ask themselves if they're actually doing the right thing or if they're messing up because that's easier. And then they take steps to preserve their integrity. Not letting bad times and bad people change one becomes the definition of success. Making a pile of money isn't success if it makes you a lesser person. Amassing influence and power are not good things if you end up a bully yourself. The philosophical person always asks him or herself, is the problem me? Is there a danger that I could become part of the problem? They answer those questions honestly and ask those questions often. I recommend it as a path. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject, and I'd like to invite you to join me. It helps me a lot if you tell others about my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you're wondering if I can be of help to you, feel free to reach out through my website for a free, no obligation screening call and we'll talk about it. Have a great week.